Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to KTV, and today I'm going to be delivering a talk called Targeted. And Targeted is delivered by Sikh Youth UK Sevadars across the country, and what we do is try and help you understand so we can get a message across of how we are targeted as a community. Now today we're going to be specifically focusing on raising awareness on the sexual grooming sign and how in coercive relationships that this can happen. So the project today is to help deliver that message to you guys so you all understand what sort of issues we face as a community, what kind of dangers are out there, how it affects us as a community, how it affects our families as a collective, what we can do as a community to help make that better. So the talk's called Targeted, and how this started is we as an organisation, Sikh Youth UK, when I joined 7 years ago, I started attending these forums, and it was a place for us to become in positive Sangat. So Sikh Youth UK, what they do, while we did these forums and we do these workshops and classes up and down the country, what happens was schools, colleges and universities and even parents would come to these programs. While they're there, they would talk about some of the issues that they were facing. And as a community, Sada Faraj Banda is to try and help where we can. So what we try to do is implement a little bit of support, trying to help raise awareness, show a bit of sympathy, you know, and try and direct them in the right directions through the right channels to help get them into a better position. What we found was a lot of issues were coming to us, and we had to help address these. So we had to learn ourselves. So the activism started, although the issues I've personally been in and involved in, I've known about for many years. Actively, for the last 7 solid years, we've been on the ground doing this day in, day out. Along with that, we do annual Shahidi football tournaments. We do a lot of other stuff. You know, it's just to help get the community together, and you know, this is where it's like a base where people can come, speak to you, you know, engage, get to know other people, network across the country. Is fantastic. So some of the work that we do up and down the country is a lot. So you know, a massive shout out to all our Sevadars who put in countless hours to try and make sure that these projects run smoothly and successfully. What I'll say today, I've said on all mainstream national TVs, I've said on Gurdwara stages, colleges, universities, schools. We don't hide anything. We're not ashamed to say anything. We will do and be as direct as we can to help you understand the exact issues. So this is what it's about. You know, we've been given mainstream media throughout the last few years to help prevent these issues and for people to be aware of what goes on and how the Sikh community is specifically targeted. Today, I'm going to be telling you how the Sikh community are targeted by sexual perpetrators. Now, you know, when we look at this as a whole, we all in agreement that these issues are everywhere, within every community, and, you know, as a community, as sects, we need to help address this, but in an agreement that these issues that are in every community. There's 3 types of perpetrators. There's an adult perpetrator, targets an underage victim. That is one type. Then there's type 2, where you could have a child perpetrator and a child victim. Or type 3, which is an adult perpetrator in a relationship with a child victim, and then they go on to exploit them when they're of a legal age in this law and the land of the law that we live in. So that becomes a coercive relationship. There is also another type where there's more than one perpetrator, and that would be gang related. If there's 2 or more, that becomes gang related. Okay, what we're going to discuss today is what comes to Sikh Youth UK, and this is a very common issue that comes to us as a community, as Sikhs, and this isn't a recent thing. This is like going back 5 decades, I'd say, and this is the religiously aggravated sexual exploitation of Sikh females. There is a law regarding this, and the law regarding religiously aggravated states that the offender demonstrates hostility towards the victim based on his or her membership of a racial or religious group, or if the offence is racially or religiously motivated. So this quote was used in 2012 in the Rochdale gang crisis, and what happened there, the judge, who was Judge Gerald Clifton, he clearly stated in the doc, he said to the perpetrators, you specifically targeted these underage young girls because they weren't part of your ethnicity or your faith. So he quoted that, and this is what the law that he went on when he quoted that in the court. Religiously motivated. Now here's an example I'm giving you, and one of these, this is just one, and there is countless. Now this is a prime example. If it was a mature relationship and there was an indecent act happening like this is, there was an indecent act happening in this video that we blurred out so you can't see it. There was an indecent act happening. The perpetrator then went on to Sri Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj's photo and then came back to the indecent act. And then he uploaded this on indecent websites online where in the public domain where people could see. And this is horrific because if it was a mature relationship, you wouldn't want this to happen. You wouldn't want your personal life out in the public domain. What happened and how we know it's religiously motivated and religiously aggravated is because some of the comments that were coming up, and these are the comments that were put on under that video while it went on this website, and it was like, your Sikh gurus are slags. That's what it says. It also says that you've just wiped out Sikhism, bro. So these are just some of the comments that we put out, but there was a lot more, but these are just some that we've showed you. This shows that it was religiously motivated. How is there historical evidence of this? Now we've done research. We set up a project called the Race Report, and what we did with that was to help go back 5 decades. We went back 5 decades and we done this historical report which showed historical evidence, and how far and how deep rooted this issue is, and it's gone back to like the 1960s. So like the PowerPoint will be showing you the 1960s where, you know, there was missing girls going in Manchester and who was targeting them. These are articles going back to the 60s. So this issue isn't a new thing since the internet come or in the 80s when people were becoming active. And I'm going to show you how like these 5 decades have turned out and how the current climate is. It started in the 60s. As you can see, there's another article now which shows in 1968 in Bradford, a Sikh girl was targeted. She was put in a red light district. Her family and her Restadar went to get her back. There was a fight broke out and people were arrested. You can see why Sikh girls were targeted. One, they would, as a shame factor, they wouldn't want others to know. So they would think that the girls would keep it quiet. That's why they would specifically target Sikh girls. Another one, the families wouldn't make a big deal about it, make it into community issues because of the sharm. So, you know, it's so taboo within our community that we don't even want to talk about it. So this is why we've got great platforms like KTV who are helping us address the Sangat and do these PowerPoints to help educate yourselves and your children. It's very important that you do have these conversations at home because as you can see by the end of this talk that I'll be delivering, you'll see how serious these issues are. And just to let you know, this is the first time exclusively that we are doing this talk on TV. We've done it on social media, we've put it out in colleges, Gurdwara, universities, and everywhere we've had a platform to do so. But this is the first time we're actually delivering the targeted talk to a TV station. So, you know, be thankful that you've been blessed to watch it exclusively on KTV. As we go back, like I said, we've done the 60s, let's go to the 70s. You know, if we go back to the 60s and 70s when this first started and these articles are showing who was being targeted, these are people who would be our grandparents' age, our great-grandparents' ages. They would have been first coming from Punjab or Kenya and landing on British soil and being targeted by perpetrators. You know, so this is an article in Slough. Like I've said, it's not in one place. People think it's just the Midlands. It's all over the place. It's all over UK. These issues aren't specifically in one place. There is a lot more people vocal in the Midlands, I'd say, because there was a lot of activism here. But I'd say more the issue isn't in one specific place. It's everywhere when it comes to Sikhs. 70s again, more articles, Huddersfield. So in the 80s, when we get, so this started in the 60s and 70s when Punjabi Sikhs were first coming on to British soil. And when we come to the 80s now, this is where activism started coming out, and we started to speak up. We started to take these cases to the authorities, to solicitors, to, you know, people were speaking out about it finally. And it was very important that there was activists who were doing the right thing and standing by that source to stand and defend their Tipa and the Izzat. That was the most priority for the righteous reasons. Now, you know, in the 80s, activism started, people were fed up. So we were losing at this stage twice as a community as soon as the activism started. Not only were we losing our mothers, sisters and daughters, but we were losing twice as a community because secondly, our fathers, brothers and sons who were decent people, impeccable records, working hard in their factories, at school, studying hard, with impeccable records, because the authorities were letting them down, they would go to try and help get their daughters or sisters or wives back or mothers back. And what was happening was they were being vilified by the authorities and then imprisoned because the work they were doing to try and bring their daughters or their mothers or their sisters back. So we lost twice as a community. Not only did we lose our mothers, sisters and daughters, then we started getting convictions on our fathers, brothers and sons. So as a community we were losing twice. Nobody was understanding our issue. Maybe it was the way we were delivering it at the time. Maybe people weren't understanding what our motives or our actions were at the time, and some people did get convicted for this. There was a lot of blood, sweat and tears, and this all started, like I said, from the 60s, 70s to the 80s. 80s continuous. You can see, I'm showing you clips, so it's going across the country. Now we're in Warsaw where it's happening, and then if you look again, headlines stating Sikh girls were used as sex slaves. You know, this wasn't in one specific place, This was up and down the country. Activism started, and there was one particular individual called Shahid Bhai Gurcharan Singh. He not only did he raise awareness on what was happening in Punjab and stood for what was going on there with our human rights, with our being violated in Punjab, but here he was trying to do camps, Gurmat camps. He was being a positive, proactive role model in the community. So people would come to him because they know for reassurance he would support, and he did. There's stories to this day which he has gone and tried to defend people's daughters, and you know they would come to him at the Gurdwara where he did, and he's a great martyr and a great role model in our history because not only did he fight for rights in Punjab, but he did it here in the UK as well. Shahid Bhai Gurcharan Singh. So this is the extent that activism went to, where we had great martyrs doing the same seva. If you look in the 90s now, 1990s, you know, people were Shariam going to college. And if you look at this article, which is being displayed on the screen right now, it shows that people were getting convicted or charged or being in court for forcefully trying to attempt to convert Sikh girls. Now, this article shows that 10 men from Allen Rock drove all the way from Birmingham down to a college in Coventry specifically to target Sikh females and forcefully convert them. If we get to the early 2000s now, before the right wing jumped on it, before the left wing jumped on it, before the right wing jumped on it to exploit this issue and the left wing to downplay the issue, we as a community were the first ones to take it to the streets. And in 2007 you can clearly see that Sikhs had enough. They went to Lloyd House and they protested for the first time ever on this issue. They locked off the streets and they had had enough. We as a community, so it's important to show, before anyone tried to exploit this issue of Sikh females being targeted, we were the first ones highlighting it, first ones taking it to the authorities, first ones to be denied justice, for any sort of justice for it, and we were the first ones to start being active about it, and to this day we are still active as a community on these issues. So for years, for 5 decades, we've been talking about Sikh females being targeted. You know, very rare there was a case where you can get a conviction because of all of these taboo issues within the community, because the authorities letting us down. And there wasn't just letting down the Sikh community. If you look in recent years, they're opening up cases historically now at the same time we were talking about it. And they're highlighting how the police failed, how the councils failed, how social services failed. So important to highlight that these historical grooming cases are only getting convicted now. So we need to start bringing these cases forward so we can highlight it. So if you look in 2013, this is a high-profile Sikh female case, which was a conviction in Leicester. Now, you know, the authorities had all the information. The family had provided the information to the authorities, And what's happened was the community reacted, and that's when there was a reaction from the community, and our brothers had to go to prison. 13 Singhs, innocent Singhs with impeccable records, ended up in prison. This is when and only when the authorities acted and arrested the perpetrators. Now, they've only charged and convicted 6 perpetrators here, but in this case there was over 20 involved perpetrators who were exploiting a young, vulnerable Sikh female. If we come to current days and current cases, before it was above restaurants, you know, and we were looking outside school gates where perpetrators were targeted, which I'll come on to in a little while. Now, Shariam, they are harassing Sikh females, perpetrators are harassing Sikh females, even in Gurdwara car park. They're coming to that extent where they believe it's okay that they can do this and there would be no reaction from our community. Now, this is really sad to see. We really need to start talking about this in every Gurdwara, at least for 2-3 minutes each weekend. Somebody on stage should be addressing these issues, making the Sangat aware so they can make their children safe, make themselves safe at the same time. It's not just underage females that are targeted. Anyone over the age of 16 also can be targeted as well. These people were harassing Sikh females in the Gurdwara car park, Shariam, in a Gurdwara in Coventry. If you look at what I'm showing you here is a process of grooming which probably was in the 70s, 80s and 90s and heavily used then. You can get, the talk I'm delivering today is quite niche because I'm talking about the targeting of Sikh females. This grooming power, the slide that's on the screen right now, I would show, I would confidently say most people would talk about these topics, issues. This is probably online. It's a standard grooming talk where you would show restaurants where people used to take young girls and keep them above these cheap sort of chicken shops and restaurants. In the second image, you can clearly see that perpetrators would park outside school gates and target females. Alcohol and drugs is always heavily used. So it takes people away, takes advantage of their vulnerability. Bhangra daytimers. Now, these were grooming grounds in the 80s and 90s. People specifically would go to them venues, perpetrators especially, would go to these venues specifically looking for Sikh females. The perpetrators would pretend to be Sikh, they would wear gare, they would wear gold chains with a khanda on, you know, they would shorten their names, they would do all sorts just to pretend they were Sikhs, just to target Sikh females and exploit them, traffic them abroad across the UK however they could. Punjabi Sikh areas specifically also were a target, and taxi drivers were heavily involved. Now, if you go online, you can see how many taxi drivers have been convicted of this. It's quite serious to see even Uber drivers are being convicted of it. So, you know, have a look. Taxi drivers would be used. This process and this image I've shown you is an old sort of PowerPoint which people tend to use and they deliver. But I'm going to show you a modern one now. And this one is like a present and current day one. Nobody would really know about these issues. They might know about one or two and this process, but the point I'm trying to make here is the current, from our current activism, we've found from all our cases that these are the types of grooming that is happening quite a lot now, and these are the sorts of types of methods and places that people are using to take advantage and exploit. Now, online, I don't even have to show you an extent how bad it is, but this is just the first show that I'm going to be talking about these issues. I will go in depth on each of these slides so you can understand how bad it is. So the online one, which you can see all the social media sites on this image, we will go into Facebook and how bad issues have been there. We will specifically go into Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and all of the others, and we will try and help educate yourself. So that's one that will be coming up very soon. But you know, internet has took from those perpetrators just parked outside school gates to another level, because they don't have to be outside the gate. Your kids, your people, the victims, the perpetrators who target them, they could be sitting in another country and your child could be sitting at home and they could be targeting them. You would think that your child's online doing their homework or whatnot, or uni work or college work, but really they're talking to someone who's in another country maybe and being targeted, and they don't know who they're talking to. It is a lot. There's a project that we're doing called Stranger Danger, and that's so important that you could educate yourselves on, because you don't know who you're talking to online and you have to safeguard yourselves. The second process, the second type you can see in here is perpetrators could even be sitting in your classrooms now, you know, and introducing you to other, you know, their elder cousins, their relatives. This is what happens, their friends. So, you know, targets aren't just always older and outside school. They actually could be of the same age, and they could be in your classes at the same time. Mobile phone shops. Now, I would advise you specifically to take your phones if they ever need repairing or any updates or anything like that. You need a phone change, phone cover. Go to your actual brands, Apple or Samsung or whatever network or brand that you use. Don't go to these cheap pop-up phone shops. You're handing your phone over to someone that you don't know who's got access to all your iCloud, all your images, all your videos, all your personal information, all your family's details, your family's images. He's got access to everything that you basically hold on your phone or on your gadget. Now, this is dangerous because they can turn that and exploit you, blackmail you in any way whatsoever. And it has happened. I will show you how it happened to a young girl in Cardiff, but I'm going to stick to the phone shops at the minute. My advice on this slide is just to make sure that you take your phones back to your actual brands, not to any one of these pop-up shops that are on every bloody corner that you could imagine. Alcohol. Now, we spoke about alcohol and drugs earlier. You know, it's always used. It still is used, but now there's a different method of using it. How people are doing it is delivering alcohol and tobacco, as in a delivery service. And while they're doing this, they're networking with people, and they're preying on people at the same time as running these businesses. So they're running these 24-hour delivery services where they're exploiting and trafficking girls, they're selling drugs, and they're doing all these things alongside this legit so-called alcohol and tobacco delivery services. Historically, I've showed you how people used to run cheap chicken shops as fronts but exploit girls above. Now we've got dessert bars and shisha bars. Dessert parlours, sorry, and shisha bars. Now, dessert parlours look very welcoming. After a night out, sometimes you might want to go for a sweet tooth or a coffee or something. You would go to these places. You know, you might want something, a cake or anything like that. They're very welcoming. People are being exploited in these places because they're open late as well. Now, that's dessert parlours. If you go to shisha bars now, the next slide clearly shows how serious it is. Shisha bars are being shut down left, right and centre. You know, they're exploiting young girls, they're supplying drugs and indecent, they're making indecent videos and images of people, they're exploiting, they're trafficking, they're putting youngsters on drugs. So it's so important that we know how serious these are, and these are just a few examples I've put on the slide. There's another one where they're shutting these shisha bars down left, right and centre. Shisha bars aren't part of our dharm. We shouldn't be attending these venues, nor should we be attending alcohol or bars or anywhere entertaining. But as a community, we are failing. We have failures where people are drinking, they're still smoking. So we need to address those issues as a community. That doesn't give anyone else the right to exploit us because of our vulnerability. Some of these grooming methods, like I just said, these are the stats from PCC. These are just some stats, but at the end of the day, these aren't the ones recorded specifically for Sikhs, because in the census, we're not recorded when perpetrators are targeting Sikhs. The authorities aren't recording these crimes properly. Like we were on about the religiously aggravated targeting of Sikh females. When the authorities get a case, they don't look if the girl's being called a dirty sickony, if religion was used in any way whatsoever. They don't look out for that. They're looking at the exploitation side. They're not looking at the religiously aggravated side. Now, for us, it's very important that we are highlighting this, and they do record this. So we need to change policies here, and this is a work for some of our political organisations who we work with, which we need to put out and put pressure on the Sarkar so they understand that we as a community need these policies changed. So when they are recording the exploitation side, they can record the religiously aggravated side at the same time. That would up the charge slightly and get a higher conviction for the perpetrators. Grooming methods, I showed you a lot of recent years are done online, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. We need to start protecting ourselves on these, which I will go into on a different day and highlight more about social media. Safeguarding yourself, don't send any images out there so people have got full access to you maybe later on they could exploit you. So don't send any indecent images to anyone whatsoever. It has led to people being blackmailed and whatnot, which we've highlighted on national TV as well. Some of the cases that I'm going to go through now, and if you look at this horrific case in Yorkshire and Doncaster, two gangs targeted a Sikh female and they were exploiting her by the end of her ordeal. And these were a gang from Leeds and a gang from Doncaster. This is probably one of the worst cases I've ever heard, you know, and it's so serious that she was targeted from the age of 11. Really bad case, and you know, to this day, the girl involved isn't actually, you know, right. She still needs support to this day. We as a community have to keep supporting them, and this is what we do as an org. We put the right people in place to help support as much as we can. If we look now at a mass, because of Europe, a lot of European Sikhs are coming in to England from Italy, Portugal, Spain, you know, Germany. They're all coming from Europe and they're settling in the UK thinking they're going to have a better life when they're not. There has been a case where a young girl was targeted in Smethwick specifically. She was exploited, put on the streets of Smethwick, you know, literally put on cannabis from a local school in Smethwick at the age of 16, and by the age of 18 she was on heroin and crack and had to sell herself to supply and provide for her habit, which is serious. She was living in the back of a shed. We were involved in the case and the family have now moved back to Spain. That's how serious it is. There was nothing here. The parents are too focused on thinking they're going to have a better life here. They're working too hard and they're not focusing on what the issues are here, and we as a community aren't telling them what the issues are. We think we keep showing them that it's a better life in the UK. There's nothing here for anyone. Really, greatly, as Sikhi thought there, it's not a great place to be because there's so many issues. So we should be helping. If people are coming to the UK, we should be telling them what the issues are before they even come here, because they don't know. They're not aware. And this is why it's important to talk about these issues on the channel, so they understand what our issues are here before they come here, so they're prepared. This case in Cardiff, now I was highlighting how bad it was. So a 14-year-old girl was targeted by a 24-year-old guy in a phone shop. He's took advantage of her when she's coming to pass her phone for repair. What's happened is there's two types of tactics used by perpetrators that they tell and coach the victims to say. One is to put an allegation of assault of some kind on your family, and two is to say, a second one they would use sometimes, is to say that you're forced to get married. If you use those two tactics, what happens is the authorities come in heavy-handed, isolate you away from your family. The family will have no access to you, and the parents will have, and the perpetrators will have full access. So your family can't talk, and the perpetrators have full access. And they are coaching young victims to say this so that they get them into the care system so they can exploit them, traffic them, and take full advantage. And this is what happened with this case. A 16-year-old girl, a 14-year-old girl was targeted. By the age of 16, she was given a BMW for her first birthday, for her 16th birthday. You know, we were heavily involved in this case, and in the end, 7 family members got arrested in this, which is horrific, all because the perpetrators coached her to make an allegation of some kind on her family, which is sad. There was no convictions in this case. However, perpetrators are still at large and they still could be targeting other Sikh females. Scotland, another one. This is a coercive relationship. The girl was over the age when she was targeted, and now while she's targeted, she's exploited, and she's living in a red light district. She was in Scotland, and some of our Silverdales were in this case. Again, she put an allegation of some kind on her family. Parents went to prison for this. How to safeguard yourselves. You need to be vigilant. You need to stay safe online. There's a lot that we need to discuss, which I'll be going into over the coming weeks. Some of the current work that we've been doing. So you can see predators targeting Sikh females, specifically who are under the legal age. These perpetrators were caught by our team, and you know, they came specifically targeting underage Sikh females, and the language they were using in their conversations was religiously aggravated. One of them, if we stick to this slide, one of them travelled all the way from London to Birmingham, and the other one was part of the other one whose family was part of a local taxi firm as well. So, you know, they had access within their community to try and get a lot of support on their side as well. These are perpetrators, these are predators that are online looking at your kids and targeting your kids online. Like I said earlier, I've gone back 5 decades. We had to do a report to get so much evidence about this. Now, the race report goes back 5 decades, and it highlights how serious our issues have been, our activism, and how serious some of the perpetrators have took to targeting Sikh females where they've trafficked them abroad. This is horrific. So we've always spoke about Sikh females, and people are always saying, why do you always bang on about Sikh females? Because we were the first ones to do, as a community, to feel these pressures, and we realised what was going on straight away, but the authorities let us down, the services let us down. We kept on talking about it, and then finally in about early 2000s, in 2006, 2007, there was a case in Lancashire which showed young white girls being targeted. Then there was a conviction in about 2012 for the Rochdale case, and Oxford, and all these big gang-related grooming cases come, and all they were saying was perpetrators were targeting young white females. But what about the Sikh females that we've been talking about as a community for 5 decades? You know, doing this report, we've never hit mainstream as much as we could have. We could have, you know, hit this so bigger. We should have been doing so much more as a community. We had to do this report to show and collect the evidence. We've collected the evidence and we've presented it. But doing that, by us as a team doing that, we finally hit mainstream media. National newspapers finally covered it, that Sikh females are also targeted. Sikh females have been targeted. So the prajar was done. We got the message out there, which is really important to highlight. It's not just white girls being targeted, Sikh females are being targeted as well. And now, after that, after we produced the report, Sarah Champion, who's an MP, she stated out there that we need to do an independent investigation into the exploitation of targeting of young Sikh females. So, you know, you've got MPs backing this. It's very important that we as a community push this narrative and agenda and highlight how bad it is with the right evidence. Not muddy the other issues, because there is issues in every community, but the targeting of Sikh females needs to be out there so people understand what it is and how we get targeted because of our cultural and religious differences. Like you see, there's an image here now I'm highlighting where we showed that we've handed the report into the government. So the Home Office have received this race report, which shows 5 decades of targeting of Sikh females. We work within the community where Telford happened. You can see here in the community engagement, we went to Telford when it was labelled Europe's capital for grooming. We went there, we spoke to the local businesses, we spoke to all places of worship, we spoke to members of the community. The only people who refused to talk to us was the taxi drivers. In one of the images here, you can see a Sikh female being targeted at a Vaisakhi Mela in Birmingham. Now, people come to our religious events to target specifically Sikh females. We have to be more aware of this. Although we're very welcoming as a community, we need to also let people know when they do come not to look at our mothers, sisters and daughters in an indecent way at the same time. So this sort of prajar needs to be out there. And working in the community, as you can see in the images below, we present this to local authorities, and you know, they are fully aware in certain areas what happens to Sikh females. As I show you, continue to show you, community engagement is important. The Panth are with us. They continue to back us. They support all our events. It is important. It's not our masala, solely just Sikh youth masala. It's a collective community masala. But it is important that everyone doing their own thing in the community. Some people do education. Some people do online videos. Some people do Sikhi camp. Some people do sports. There's so many varieties. Some people do media. All a variety of different angles that we cover. But as an org, we do this, and we back them when they're doing positive work, and when we're doing positive work, the Panth backs us at the same time. Here's us engaging with MP Sarah Champion. She came, she listened to the concerns, and she told us what we should be doing as a community and how we can really get this message out there, because how we need to get convictions. We need the people in the right positions, professionals on board doing this. Working with other communities and other organisations, this is a survivor called Sammy Woodhouse. She came out the Rotherham scandal, and you know, she spoke out how she was abused and if you follow her on social media, you can see how much she's made a difference. She has, you know, gone up as far as to try and change policies. She's worked tirelessly, so you know, I would give her a shout out, follow her, she's doing fantastic work. I've had you know, the great time to speak to her regularly. She sent us cases as well, which we've supported as well, so she's a fantastic woman. Please do follow her. She's come out of the other end, and she, you know, she's written a book. The book she's written is such powerful way. It will tell exactly what I've said today. It will tell you things 100 times worse. You know, it's coming from their eyes. Some of the other work we've done as an org, we produce music and films to highlight these issues. You know, it's great to get several others on board who want to do this. So if you want to do that, continue, just contact us on our social media pages or our phone numbers. You can work out what your skill set is and how you can help support and take this bazaar to another level. You've heard me. Now listen to their voices, read their books, see what they said about the ordeals they went through. It is horrific, some of these cases. There's a Telford girl here, there's girls in Rotherham, Rochdale speaking. Read their books, see what they say. This book, specifically, Katie Alicia, she went to uni in Birmingham. She came to university, within 2 weeks she was raped. After that she was exploited and trafficked around Birmingham, and 70 men took advantage of her. 70 men, a gang of 70 men. What can you do to help? Put out whatever you can, peer support, you know, put these messages in your family, make videos, do as much awareness as you can to highlight this. Share this video, what we produced today, put it out there, and let's help make a difference in the Sikh community. I want to thank you all for listening. Again, this was exclusive to KTV. We've never done this on the Targeted Talk on TV, and this is the first time it's happened, and it will continue to. From what I've spoken about today and all the slides I covered, what we will be doing in the future is covering each topic and putting a bit more effort into it so you understand it a bit more. But today I've done you a wide range of things so you understand how serious this is and how wide, far-stretched this is, how serious it can be. People from Europe coming in, not understanding, to the social media, to people being trafficked abroad, to this kind, you know, people being targeted at college, university, what sort of methods are used, what places are to go. You know, I've covered a lot today. It's so important that you get involved. You know, contact us on our details, let us know on our social media pages, and let us know what you can do. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please share this far and wide so people understand how bad it is for the Sikh community. Thank you all for listening. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.